Their name is Rosa Cisneros. They'll be presenting LifeStrings screen dance work, pushing the norm and navigating the storm through motherhood. Rosa is an artist researcher with a background in dance, sociology, and films. She works with charities and NGOs in the UK and Europe, leading several projects aiming to make dance and education accessible to vulnerable groups and ethnic minorities. She works closely with freelance artists developing ethical and equitable standards. Welcome, Rosa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all of the behind the scenes organizers and individuals. Thank you. My name is Rosa, and for anyone who would benefit or like an audio description, I am a woman sitting in a cream-colored chair. I have olive skin tone. I'm wearing black framed glasses. My long black hair is pulled up, and I'm sitting in front of a burgundy wall. Hello. Obviously, we've been thinking, moving, and there's this mind-body connection that's happening all the time throughout today. And it's been so inspiring and challenging and really wonderful to be here. So thinking about how time and bodies and, how we sit in these various spaces, and also navigating decoloniality and how that resides in our bodies. A bit of the work I'm going to talk about today is reflecting on a screen dance piece that you may or may not have seen that I suppose, continues to look at trauma in our body, how this relates to cultural traditions, how this might sit within institutions. And so I'll talk about the process of the film. I won't get into kind of the kind of theory that underpinned it, but I will say that it's built from slow violence, which is a theory and work that is in research that happens often in the environmental movement. For those, just a brief overview, slow violence is often linked to the institutionalized ways that organizations and the climate crisis is slowly affecting different communities. And so that was a starting point for me. Well, there were several kind of entry points, but that was a particular one because the environmental realities has always, for having a flamenco Roma background, our relationship to nature is very, very important to us. I don't do flamenco on the floor. The earth is receiving the flamenco sounds, and there's something very cyclical. There's something very alive in that, and honoring that. And while I grew up in a very traditional kind of Roma flamenco environment, I also trained classically and learned and went to conservatoire. So there was a bit of tension in that, and navigating that. In relation also to the environment and what's happening, I came across these ideas around slow violence. And I started questioning, how does that live with us? And how does trauma also sit with us, generational trauma? How is that passed on through movement in our bodies and through dance? And how are we challenging or not challenging some of these ideas through our dance and what we pass down? And that really came to life for me when I had to start making decisions about how I wanted to pass down flamenco to my own girls. I have two daughters, one Yasmin, 7.5, and one is now 3.5. But the film you might have seen, they're much younger. So before we get into that, I know I have very few minutes, but I just want to stop and ask us to breathe. And I'd like us to look at this image. Now, there are many problems with this image, but it says the law is the same for everyone. It must treat us fairly. And this is one of the human rights. And we know that this isn't true for everyone. And one of the things that when we're violated in whatever form that might be, some of us, if you stop and breathe and think of a moment when you felt some form of discrimination, some form of injustice, And if you try to remember that moment, it's sitting somewhere in your body. Now, I hope I'm not triggering anyone. And if I am, I'm happy to speak with anyone after and to kind of sit with anyone. But that reality, that tuning in is quite important, particularly within flamenco that has this traumatic past, that flamenco was born out of the social, political, cultural reality, the rejection, the discrimination against the Roma. And so that is there. And so how do we live with that? And for some of us, you know, discrimination and those things happen not only on a daily, but sometimes multiple times a day. So how do we negotiate that? And if this is an anchoring part of this historical reality, then when you're sharing that, whether in a studio context, whether with your family, how do we not omit that, but honor that reality in a respectful way? So for me, a lot of the work with this particular piece was navigating what I'm calling the storms that sit within our body, but within those storms, there's also a lot of beauty that can come. And so this piece was commissioned by an organization, and it toured into different gallery spaces. And I'd like you to take a moment and just look at, this is the official poster. And if you had to describe this poster to someone who could not see, what would you say? What kind of language would you use? What comes out? How would you describe the body? What would you describe about the body? And so these were a lot of questions that I was making the piece with my daughters as well. I had to really kind of sit and think about. And earlier, one of our colleagues earlier was saying that she, with her menstrual cycle, would talk to her uterus. And, you know, so it's, how do we negotiate? So there were different moments when I felt I was talking to different parts of my body and navigating some of this reality. And so coming back to describing this poster to someone, the way we would describe it would be very different. And that's the beauty of it. But imagine for me as an artist making this screen dance piece that I knew was going to sit in a gallery space, I wanted it to be accessible. And a lot of what I was hoping was, and challenging myself, was to not just make screen dance work that could somehow reflect these thoughts I was feeling, navigating this tension, this process, but also how do we make more inclusive, accessible screen dance work? And there, I realized that there was a piece I wanted to share. And if I wanted to add audio description, I would be making so many decisions for that piece. And so it became a real challenge. And each time the piece moved to a different gallery space, I had to find another way to make another video, or to make another kind of speak with the gallery owners as well about how to hold this kind of work. And there's no right or wrong way, but it was just that this honoring of the moment in time, the place. And so a little bit, how am I for time? A few more minutes. So a little bit about the work was taking traditional flamenco dances and also deciding what I was going to pass on, what I wasn't going to pass on, thinking about disruption, thinking about what I've learned from these colonial spaces, from ballet, but then deciding, actually, I want to hold that. I want to reclaim that part. And I do love that my girls are in ballet. I do love that they can create and co-create with me. But I also want to allow them to understand that legacy. And so how do we create and think about these tiny details, the gestures? How do we allow the individuals to come in to creating this work? So and the whole piece is linked also to climate justice and our relationship with the ancestral. I'll stop there because I think I'm out of time very soon. But again, these were some of the, for those that have not seen the video, I should say that this is part one of a trilogy. The second part of the film is, or of the trilogy, is around plastic and consumption and ocean. And again, it's similar ideas of thinking about what decisions we make, and also reflecting this moment in time. Maybe in 5 years, this piece might not have any emotional or pull anything emotional from me, because for whatever reasons. But at this moment in time, or 2 years ago when I first made it, it felt very relevant to what we were coming out of, lockdown, motherhood. At that moment in time, there were certain situations with my girls that I was navigating with their health. And so again, I feel that the potentiality to capture and to also challenge these ideas around slow violence, around what that does and how we can also say no to some of that, really was coming through in the making of this screen dance film, making this screen dance film slot into gallery spaces that were quite Eurocentric, and also allowing spaces, artistic spaces and cultural spaces, to understand that the body and dance is a living, breathing art form that continues to evolve. And so there was a lot of kind of positioning and activism work linked to this film. And at the very end, I asked the question, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? So it's playing a bit with this idea of circles and cycles, where we think of ancestors kind of as, you know, the past, but actually we are ancestors now. And what kinds of decisions, what footprint, what do we want to say and leave for our future family members? So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Thank you. We don't have much time for questions, but we will have a group discussion in about after 2 more sort of like lightning talks. So I will go ahead and introduce the next person. They are Iatua Felagai Taito. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Am I?
Yeah, no, it was mostly correct, but I appreciate the attempt because I know it's like really hard phonetically if it's a Pacific name, but yeah.
Would you be able to say your name just so that I can continue as well?
Yes. So my name is Iatua Felagai Taito.
Okay, thank you. So Iatua is a multidisciplinary artist who has performed as a poet in Jafa Poetry Slam, and is also an actor and dancer in theatre productions and dance productions, a previous member of Auckland Theatre Youth Company, also serves as a freelance journalist, writer for The Big Idea New Zealand, and guest author for and contributor for the Craccum magazine at the University of Auckland. Formerly, he has a BA in Dance, Drama and Pacific Studies, Postgraduate Diploma in Dance Studies, Master of Dance Studies with First Class Honours, and is the University of Auckland Doctoral Scholarship awardee, and currently will be pursuing a PhD in Philosophy in Dance Studies. Iaitua's research is centered around the empowerment of rainbow, LGBTQIA+, MVPFAFF+ people through mediums of performing arts, specifically targeting Siva Samoa in relation to the Samoan community. They will be presenting their work, Decolonisation of Siva Samoa. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Eliza. Kia ora koutou, talofa lava. Malo lava le soifua maumalelangi me ma. Talofa lava. Hi, my name is Iatua Felagai Taito. And I'm very thankful to be here. Sending lots of love to those that have said and speechified and amplified their messages today. And yeah, let's begin. Mind me, I'm also gonna time myself so then I know that I won't be that long. But for those that have watched the video, I will kind of just unpack as much as I can within this time constraint. But in regards to like my abstract in itself, my abstract title is Decolonization of Siva Samoa. And when I think of decolonization, I'm thinking about this term in the way Professor Linda Tuhiwai-Smith, who is a Indigenous Manawahine Māori woman in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the way that she envisions decolonization is the way that I see it. So she states that decolonization is a critical Indigenous response to the effects of colonization and imperialism that recognizes the exclusive nature of Western research methods and attempts to recover, recognize, and recreate by using our own Indigenous epistemological constructs. So for me, my Indigenous underpinning is being an Aotearoa New Zealand-born Samoan who is queer or tawatane and Christian. And my passion is Siva Samoa as a dance medium. So essentially, Siva Samoa is a traditional Samoan dance. And in this context, Siva Samoa is exuding and evoking grace and allows the exploration of traditional customs and storytelling through embodied movement to be in occurrence. But within a Samoan setting, and because Samoa, if you do not know, Samoa is a sociocentric Christianized island in the Pacific. So the way that Siva Samoa was practiced pre-Christian and pre-contact time is where my point of departure is for my Master of Dance Studies research. So that is where the crux of my research is. For those that saw the video, especially from 4 minutes to 40 seconds to 7 minutes and 7 seconds, or if you saw the whole video in its entirety, which I acknowledge is extremely long, it really is about the notion around queerness. And queerness was so normalized in Samoan society. It was a part of the fabric of Samoan society. And when Christianity came into Samoa, arguably in the 18,000s, it kind of shifted the way that queer people in Samoa were. So they were so normalized and a part of Samoan society, and then now they're more tolerated than accepted, and it is them shifting from being normalized to being othered in many senses. And so for me, the way that I looked at decolonization was trying to reconnect and revitalize and re-indigenize those queer realities where it used to be a part of Samoan society, and it was praised to be authentically different. It was not shunned to it wasn't shunned to the side. It also, if you watch the video, it kind of shows the understanding of colonial difference and decolonial difference. So if you see Siva Samoa is all about exuding grace and traditional customs. And if you see Siva Samoa currently, if you like type it up on YouTube, for example, and what you're going to see is it's very aesthetically 2D frontal movement where it shows them happy and they're smiling whilst moving, and it's very centered around your hands. And so the way that you accentuate your hands, the way that you se'e, which is feet gliding in Samoan culture, it is seen as like the aesthetic is extremely important. But how I kind of approach it is it's not based around the external feeling and appearance, it's based on the internal feeling. And because Siva Samoa is so like colonially 2D and frontal, it kind of shifts the narrative of what Siva Samoa might have looked like back then. And so the way that I engaged was with Siva Samoa as a dance medium was trying to unsettle it, making it more crazy, making it more, people would argue that it might look theatrical, but it's more spiritual. It's more playing with the notion around Siva that it wasn't just graceful and smiles. It, you know, showed different variations and different textures with the way that you occupy your hands. So for example, Siva Samoa is very much using your hands like this, but then the way, if you watch the video, it's kind of like more accentuated in a way where it's kind of like in a creepy manner a little bit. And it was important to kind of do that for me in my decolonial practice. And then it leading to it being a spiritual element. And so within Siva Samoa, for those that engage with like Western methods of research and Indigenous knowledge, as you know, a lot of people would see Western research methods above Indigenous knowledge, and a lot of people won't see Indigenous knowledge as substantial. And our, you know, oratory, storytelling, songs, our chants, sorry, I'd rather say chants than songs, our chants, our indigeneity, that is valid or more valid than Western research methods. It's always been there. And so for me, unpacking and being a part of a colonial institution like the University of Auckland, I would do Siva Samoa, and for those that are like spiritual, like there has been some spiritual experiences of or activity whilst engaging in this type of work. But then you can imagine that through academia, a lot of people won't verify, or everything is like you have to cite certain things and cite certain sources. But in some cases, in most cases, in regards to Samoa, it's extremely hard to cite these things because we don't necessarily write down those Indigenous knowledge and histories. Some things are kept within a certain community where it's not actually accessible for everyone and anyone. And in addition, it's also like hard to verify certain things when it is more orated rather than written. And so talking about that, those spiritual elements or the metaphysical elements was important. I positioned it at the University of Auckland, the Whale. And so if you watch the video, it's based at a Pacific architectural home. And it is a little bit interesting. For me, it made sense to position it there because it is the heart of Pacific staff, Pacific alumni, and Pacific students, like as a spiritual home at the university. And so I wanted to use that setting to decolonize within a colonial institution, just so then it is best suited for my community in regards to the connection between, if I put my piece in a studio or a theater, it just won't suffice and it wouldn't be as effective. And lastly, I wanted to delve into this decolonization of Siva Samoa in the video and kind of unpack it a little bit, is because there's no academic literature done by Samoans talking about Siva Samoa. There's a lot of literature from other people, from other scholars who come to Samoa and they see Siva Samoa and then they write from their perspective, but then they lack the cultural nuance because they're not of Samoan heritage. And so for me, I kind of wanted to use this conference to kind of talk about, speechify, unpack certain themes, and talk about it from a Samoan perspective or a diasporic Samoan perspective in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And yeah, I am cautious of time. It's like 9 minutes on my time clock, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And we will have time later for the group discussion. And it was a wonderful presentation and a wonderful job what you're doing. And I present now the next presenter, Maïra de Oliveira Aggio. She's a mover artist, graduated as a trapeze artist at ESAC, École Supérieure des Arts du Cirque in Brussels. and an independent researcher. She's a mother, dancer, a yoga teacher, and she's currently writing her first solo show, MACACADA, Study of a Brazilian Monkey, where she creates in a multidisciplinary way, mixing artistic disciplines, intellectual research, and criticizing the rupture between nature and culture and Western epistemology.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm really not used to this form of exchanging, but really excited about everything that was already said. I tried to organize a little bit because it's 2 years of reflection, researching for 10 minutes. Yes, I'm a monkey, a Brazilian monkey. I didn't decide it. I saw it in the eyes of the European people during these 13 years that I live here. I'm talking from France now. And macacada, that in Portuguese means a group of monkeys or the act or gesture of imitating this animal, is my first research creation solo. I'm a Brazilian circus, dance, theater artist, and also an independent researcher. And I grew up like this, crouched, squatting, naked feet, grounded in the northeast of Brazil, Salvador, Bahia, Rua Mocambo. If I wasn't like this, I was probably hanging on a tree, eating a fruit. Manga, cacau, pitanga, acerola, seriguela, cajá, umbu, carambola, jambo. Surely this passion of suspension made me a trapezist, and I graduated as a trapezist in this high circus school of Brussels in Belgium, where I lived for 6 years. And it was in a train trip to Brussels after 5 years without going there that I read Kafka's novel, A Report to an Academy, and I had this kind of eureka, and the idea of Macacada was born as a research creation and a transdisciplinary performance. In this novel, Kafka tells about the history of a monkey that talks in front of an academic about his transition from a monkey to a universal man. He was captured by European in Africa, and he travels in a boat in a cage, where this monkey of Kafka realized that in the man's world there is no freedom possible, only issues. He has two, the zoo or the music hall. And he chose the music hall, and he dedicates himself to learn this modus operandi of a European man. I choose the circus, like the monkey of Kafka chose the music hall, and I also learned this European culture, and somehow I tried to integrate it. And Macacada is surely a step back into this process of integration that I've been through. I was seen and called like monkey several times in this period of this experience in Europe, surely because of my exotic body and appearance, also because of my voice that is too loud and that breaks the sacred silence around myself, because of this circus body that a lot of times try to subvert perspectives, juggling, balancing. And I discovered in this trip, in this train trip, where I had this idea that Brazil is the country with the most species of monkey in the world. And the most common of them is the capuchin monkeys. They are loved by the science and by myself, also an inspiration for this creation, because they are the only monkeys capable to make tools to nourish themselves in whole America. They have also a culture of themselves, of transmission. And Macacada idea was born with this will of reflection about this rupture between nature and culture in this fabric of knowledge in Europe, this Western epistemology. This knowledge in Western is produced by a rationality that sees the world in a linear way, in a vertical way, in a squared way, that finished by making pyramids of hierarchy between classes, races, gender, species. And now, after just 2 years of researching and artistic residencies, I wrote a structure of a performance that I start in a tree hanging, eating a mango, using my skills of trapezist, circus, and dance artist to build this body, this animal body, and provoke somehow to the audience this question about our ancestrality body. Our thumb announces in our anatomic body that we come from, in the evolution process, from this connection with the trees, no? And I ask myself, when did we stop hanging on trees and why? And where are the trees in our space-time of life or work? And what are our relationship with these living beings so close to us in this evolution process? After this moment, the audience goes to the space of the performance conference that starts with a video that maybe you saw. It's available online. And then I started this performance conference where I seal poetry, body movement, and theory. And I criticize this epistemology of the Western with the references, inspired by references from that I call against colonization, inspired by the philosopher quilombola Brazilian Antônio Bispo dos Santos, known as Nego Bispo. He defines himself as a farmer of words. For him, the words are alive, and he shares words to grow up new thoughts for people. And he says that the quilombos are against colonization, against colonialism, because since the beginning, they were against this model. Quilombo are the organizations of resistance in Brazil that exist since the colonization, and it is a conference between knowledge from Africa and from the original people from Brazil, the indigenous people. I speak 5 languages, the Portuguese, French, Dutch, English, Spanish. And in all these 5 languages, the colonialist language, there is this structure built between subject and object, building relationships of subordination and domination. In my research, I discovered that the Maya Toholabos in the Chiapas, Mexico, they have a language without object. Everything is subject, everything has a subjectivity. And for me, in this language, we start already to build relationships of subordination and domination, because it's easier to dominate a living body when we transform it in object without life, no? And in the end of this performance conference of MACACADA, I invite the audience to move their asses. For real, because it will be a DJ set of Brazilian funk and brega funk after, but also as a provocation, because in these 5 languages that I speak, there is this expression, oh, move your ass, to invite the subject to action. And somehow I think that in this world now, we need everyone to move our asses. And I think it could start by literally moving their asses, because it's the tail we lost in the evolution process. It's a part of our body that is really important. For the Capuchins, the tail, it's like a member, like an arm or a hand. And in the Afro-Brazilian rhythms, we have our asses that moves a lot, and it's really the place in our body that bring life, no? This position, I am crouched, squatting. In Portuguese, we call it cócoras. This position it's for me against colonialism, because for the eyes of a colonialist, it's a kind of a subordination position, because I'm close to the earth, to the ground, and it's dirt, it's better to elevate and to raise up. But it's in this position that a lot of civilizations gave birth, rest, talk, work. It's also this position that if you see the fetus, the baby in the belly of the mama, it's also a position that we put the babies when we carry them in our back. It's a position that make our perineum really strong, a muscle that participates in the breath, that sustain a lot of organs in our body, and that the Western environment with the chairs, with the high beds and toilets, with the cars, made weak. We have a really weak perineum in our society, So somehow I invite you all to come back to this position, because these knees over the hips is a life position, and it's also the monkey's position. So this, I don't know, I think I'm already out of time. Maybe I tried to bring a lot of questions and inspirations I have for this project, and maybe I will stop and it will open to discussion now, if there is some question.
Yeah, thank you very much. You are such a storyteller. This was like amazing. I felt like I wanted you to be on a stage and doing more, and I just wanted to continue listening. We should open up the group discussion. I think we can push it to about 35, if that's okay with everybody. The floor is yours, wherever you want to begin. Raise your hand, put questions in the chat, whatever you'd like.
Just to say, I moved my ass and I went and I was squatting then after a few minutes of listening and being with you. So thank you for that. It was exactly what I needed. So thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in for a second. I think that there was such a strong connection of generations through each of your discussions, of your performances and presentations. Rosa, you're obviously looking at this kind of like parent-child dynamic in a lot of ways, but also like what gets passed down between cultures and generations, and not just like internal culture, but nature and society as well, like, and how that implicates and affects within your performance, and having watched your video, there's like so much rich symbolism in there about that. It's Maïra, right?
Maïra,
yeah. You also have this, like, I mean, your connection from generations goes so far back, right? You're talking about evolution and like the original natures of our bodies and how that's kind of changed and shifted over time, and how you still connect to that past in a lot of ways, and maybe even get called out for it in diminutive ways in like French culture and society and stuff, right? And but there's like this connection to this past that you really embody and engage with in such a beautifully and amazing like storytelling way as well. I feel like all of us kind of got pulled into that visualization and conceptualization. And Iatua, at the same point in time, you're talking about these like relationships between like this indigenous queerness, and like how like there is this like native queerness that you feel associated with and connected to, but also you have this like religious, slightly, I don't want to say indoctrination, but you have like this religious connection as well at the same time, right? And there's like these two pathways and these two different kind of like legacies that come from your past and intersect in oftentimes conflicting ways, right? And so I think you all have like really interesting through lines of these generational connections, and how that causes, I guess, in some ways, issues of conflict or issues of connection that you attempt to resolve through each of your individual performances. And I find that there's so much rich symbolism in each of your presentations and each of your videos, and how, especially Iatua, how you describe in your video what those connections are as well. So I don't know if there was a question there, but I like drawing things through. I thought that was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like there's also in both your works, there's an attention to the details and kind of allowing those details of your bodies to be in the space, and kind of remembering that there is a past, but also that, you know, when you were talking about the hands, and kind of holding that, you know, like just, it's so small in those gestures, but it's also can affect so many things. And I think like that's what I keep feeling, is that there are ripple effects. There's, you know, to adjust these parts of our bodies or to tune into it, it can have these effects and these ripples that are very powerful. And what looks very small is actually very big. And there's a symbolism there that, yeah, that I felt like you're both playing with and really respecting as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think oh, sorry.
Sorry, we have a question, but maybe
Sorry.
finish your thought first.
No, yeah, so I just wanted to send lots of love to Maïra and Rosa, with your guys' beautiful body of work. It was really, 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 really beautiful and powerful and monumental. And I think the way that Andy broke it down and just unlayered everything was so nice and palatable. And I just wanted to like add just a little bit of thought in regards to what Andy was saying. Like, I think when I was doing my body of work, it was like a coming out story, pretty much like a coming out story of me being queer, but also me being Christian and Samoan, and ultimately trying to prove the point that through a colonial past and trying to decolonize, but then at the same time healthily existing in those communities, like it's possible, like it doesn't have to be divisive, like the rainbow community and the Christian community, and it's like here, and it's like, no, it can find a way to work together in a way that you can still have a difference of opinion, exercise your freedom of speech, but at the same time connect and correlate. And yes, I think that's like my little journey, even right now going into PhD, is like it's still weaving together. It doesn't have to be divisive, but understandably so. I understand why it is divisive. And I think for me, I'm just trying to bridge the gap between both worlds, because I always felt like an outsider a little bit, trying to navigate these two worlds. So I just wanted to send acknowledgement with your analysis or just reflection of all our works. Andy, thank you so much for those reflections.
Hi, Hazel. I don't know if you want to still.
Yes, is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for your work, Maïra. I really enjoyed it. And in fact, I'm in Brussels right now. And yeah, hello to you. My question would be, I think I can understand the crouching, the squatting very well from from an animalistic perspective, and also the hanging as well on the tree, which are two very inherent mode of existing for monkeys. And so I think, so there are lots of ways that we can argue how we're actually different from monkeys as human beings, would be that this bipedal existence. And can you tell me about how you navigate this in between, this really low down on the ground, crouching mode, and also this hanging, almost extended or upside down, kind of like very arm strength focus, or like elbow strength, or I don't know, other strength other than you know, the lower, like center of gravity kind of existence. Like, is there a bridge between the two existence? Like, how do you navigate this bipedal mode that we're given as human beings?
What is pedal?
Bipedal means you walk on 2 feet.
Ah, the biped. Okay. For me, I really have the impression that the pedal position is a pathology. For me, it's almost a transition position more than anything, because in the evolution, we should be like this, no? But our head became too heavy, so we couldn't do like this with our head, because otherwise we were going to hurt our neck. So, and we cannot live in the forest or in the nature looking to the ground. So, and we had to do a little bit like this to see everything, and go up. For me, is really a transition to hang or to run, or it's not a position to stay, to stop in the, I don't know, in the bank or in somewhere we are staying like this, waiting. You know, if I talk with people that come also from places connected to the ground, we are unable in the cities to wait like standing on our feet. It's really the pressure on our lower back, it's too much in our pelvis. It is the pressure of the high body and the lower body into the pelvis. It's really not good to stay in this position. So for me, I question a lot all the monoculture in this Western epistemology. And it goes also for me, the monoculture of this body, like it was an evolution. For me, it's an unevolution to stay in this position a long time, because it's the reason of our a lot of disease in our bodies, no? So I don't know how to say to you how I travel between, I think the way I travel between these two worlds of hanging or down in the earth, it's really like treating this position as transition more than an evolution position. You know, I think it's aristocracy who built this kind of thing of straight, and it shows just that this way of thinking, seeing the world, sees linearity, verticality as a strength. And actually, for me, it's only aches to turn around. No, it's more like how can I recognize the verticality as a point to have some possibility to keep going the circular and cyclical movement, or that I'm more connected to this idea that the things are circular and cycle. So going up and down, it's like the moon that makes the blood of the tree go up and down. How you say in English, the sève, la sève, a save, you know, the blood of the tree that with the full moon goes on the top of the leaves and then go down with the new moon. So I think we are cycle, and we are also in this movement of so the staying here right on our feet, for me, it's really it's not so good. It's a fake news. I don't know. It's a fake news that this is evolution. I don't know. I don't know if I answered.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. If there are no other questions, then we can move on, but I'll give you all some time to think. Oh, we've got one. Go ahead.
Hi, I would like to add on that question because I feel a lot what you said in my body. And it feels like, wow, there are words to describe somehow these feelings. And then I have this question of, do you know people who have knee problems and therefore feel like they can't be in this position? And maybe did the position even help with the knee problems, like in return, or do you have like a specific experience with this correlation, maybe?
I think you have to start slowly, because it can be the knees, but it can be also this tandem, that it can be not long enough, and some people will stay like this, you know. But for the knees, yes, I think you have to go slowly, because actually this environment of being on our feet, sitting on chairs, for some bodies, it had it has an impact, you know. So you cannot just come back to this position and stay a long time here without preparing the body for it. So I think the perineum, I think, is the first thing maybe to reinforce and to reconnect with this, to go little down. And yes, I'm not specialized in this medical stuff to say more than this. What I experience is more in my own body than in other bodies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think we're safe to move on to the next presenter, unless anybody has any other questions. No? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. That was a really insightful discussion.